Hey, welcome in to the Major League Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Major, adjusting the webcam here, and we've got a lot we're going to talk about today as I move stuff around. And hold on, y'all are angled. All right, here we go. You don't need to see my empty bowl that I had for lunch. Okay. Here we go. All right, welcome in. It is the final day for the Big 12 preview. I'll do a quick, brief, super fast update on what I have for the Big 12 here real quick as soon as I tweet out the live link here on the Twitters. Okay, got the link shared out. All righty. All right, there it is. Share, retweet. All right, so guys, we are going to dive right into my little Big 12 summary here of what I have put out and what I kind of think is going to happen in the Big 12. So we'll go worst to best here. So Kansas, low talent, low everything, not really sold on what they got as a program right now. So for me, if you're a Kansas person, if you're Kansas anything right now, you are looking for development. You are looking for the opportunity to go out and show some of these guys that are at a Rutgers, at a Buffalo, some of these group of five players that are looking to probably hit a Power Five team and look good. This is scheme time. This is show off your scheme. It's do what you can to get things done because it's either now or never for Kansas to start turning around. And if it doesn't happen now, it's never, ever going to ever happen again. So Kansas, I got them 0-12. They have no talent. They have no depth. They have a super talented coach who's a proven winner. So we'll probably eventually see this get turned around. No all Big 12 selections, first or second team in my all Big 12 selections list. I've got Texas Tech at 9 at 5-7, 2-7 in the conference. Tied with Baylor, but I have Baylor beating them head to head. I don't remember who I said Texas Tech would beat. I'm not. They'd probably get like a Kansas State or West Virginia, kind of somebody like that. Anyway, so I got Baylor and Texas Tech at 5-7, both of them with two All Big 12 players in two different situations going on. You look at Texas Tech. Texas Tech defensively has nothing. They have absolutely nothing to write home about defensively. It's for me with Texas Tech, what you've got to look at is they've got to score 50 points a game to stay in football games. Hopefully the other offense makes a mistake. Hopefully this, hopefully that is what you're getting on offense. Or what you're getting on defense with Texas Tech. Offensively, they're good. They're going to be one of the best offensive teams probably in the nation, but you can only rely on that so much before it actually starts faltering. Look at the 2018 Oklahoma team and how they played against Alabama. So, and West Virginia, really. So, Texas Tech, I've got it 5-7 on the year, two all Big 12 players. I've got Baylor also 5-7 on the complete opposite scale. Like you look at Texas Tech, all offense. If you could combine Texas Tech and Baylor into a team, they would be a really, really solid fourth or third place team in the Big 12. Because Baylor is the exact opposite of Texas Tech. They've got a defense and a defensive-minded coach that is straight up great. This is exactly the situation you want if you're a team that's looking to be defense first and start building on the offense once you got buy-in on the defense. Baylor has the buy-in on the defense. They just have no offense. It's probably going to be Jacob Zeno as your option at quarterback, and you just got to hope he's develops into someone accurate. So Baylor and Texas Tech, they're in a tier of their own at the bottom. They're at the Big 12 of actually deep, not terrible teams, but not good teams. Just kind of that right in between. Because when we get to the Big 12 from 4 through 7, you've got a lot of good teams that are interchangeable spots. You can tell me Kansas State can be the third or fourth place team. You can tell me Oklahoma State can be the third or fourth best team. You can tell me Texas is going to be third or fourth best team. You can tell me Kansas State is the third or fourth best team. And that's what's crazy about all this is I think you got Kansas State and Texas. I got both at 6-6. Texas at 4-5 in the conference. And I like Kansas State. I really like Kansas State this year. I want to see them play, and I want to see if they can stay completely healthy. If they can stay completely healthy and they play to how they were in the first 3 games of the year last year, they might find themselves in the third place spot here in the Big 12. Texas, I talked about it on, I just literally posted the video. I talked about it with Ian yesterday. Third coach for those seniors, fourth defensive coordinator for those seniors. The buy-in is what's going to get me. Do they have the buy-in? Do they have the things to be able to sit there and go, look at what we're doing here at Texas. Look at what we want to do. Look at these things that we're doing. I don't see it. I don't see that that's an option. I don't see Texas. I see Texas struggling more. Being a really talented team is good. Having talented players out of high school is good. That's exactly what you want. Those are things that you strive for if you're going to be a team that wants to go and heading to the SEC. Listen, Missouri is a talented team, somewhat. Mississippi State is a talented team, somewhat. But you want to know who else is also a really talented team? Georgia's a really talented team, and they're developing people. I was in a conversation yesterday about the most talented teams here. I mean, they're on with Auburn, and Auburn, the last 5 years, Texas and Auburn averages a 13.6 rank, and Texas averages a 13.4 rank. The difference here is Auburn's been a more successful football team than Texas has been. So that's going to be the thing for me is I see Auburn struggling this year too. I don't see them being 6-6, but I mean, there's just so much that has to go into this. And now we're looking at, I don't see them beating Oklahoma because the first year player in the Red River rivalry thing is a thing. Baker Mayfield lost. Kyler Murray lost. If I remember right, Sam Ehlinger lost his. So it's just a lot of things for Texas for me is I don't trust their offensive line. They don't have any depth. They don't have any talented depth at offensive line. So you're already playing behind the 8 ball in that situation to where your offensive line's not great. People are going to try and sell me on their defensive line. I'm not sold on that either. I don't think Texas is a viable option as the third place team in the Big 12. With that said, I could see them as the third place team, but I just don't trust the line of scrimmage players to be able to do what they need to do. So with that said, let's jump up to Oklahoma State. I have Oklahoma State as the second most talented team as far as all Big 12 selections at 10 in my list, but I only have them at 5 because there's a guy that's their head football coach who's in his own mind, who can't seem to just break out of this mindset of, hey, I'm the super popular coach of the conference. Look at me. Look at my mullet. Listen, if he goes back to well-cut, straight cut Mike Gundy to where he was a really, really good football coach, I could see Oklahoma State actually being the third place team in the conference, but I don't trust Mike Gundy, so I got them at 5th. It's 7-5. I got West Virginia. Listen, some of y'all are going to look at me and go, you have West Virginia at 8-4. I have West Virginia at 8-4. Here's why. They're returning their quarterback. They're returning most of their offensive line. They're returning the best defensive nose guard behind Perion Winfrey in the league. They're just a solid team. I am not a big buyer into their head coach, but for whatever reason, it depends on what day you catch me with West Virginia. And when I wrote this, and actually today, I'm buying West Virginia at 8-4. I think it's a thing. I think they can do it. With that said, I could also see them being 6-6. So West Virginia, talented team. Don't really trust their head coach a whole lot, but I trust their quarterback more now than I did last year, and I trust them being a little bit more experienced. With that, number 3, TCU. I have TCU as my dark horse, Big 12. You better pay attention to them or you're going to lose football games team. It's Gary Patterson, so their defense is going to be really good every year. This year seems different to me because this defense looks more and more like the 2017 defense. For me, it's going to come down to what does their offense look like? Is this going to be the 2015 or 16 TCU Horned Frogs to where they were not great? Let's see, Texas Christian. Okay, here we go. So are they going to be the 2016 version to where they had a really good defense, but offensively they weren't great? Or are they going to be the 2017 version of them to where they had a pretty decent their offense wasn't a strength, but it wasn't something that's just going to blow you away. It was going to be more of their defense that did that. So it's one of those situations for me with them. Are they going to look more like the 2016 team? Or are they going to look more like the 2019 team or even last year's version of the team? Or are they going to take that step to find out, are they actually better than the 2017 team and kind of take strides to going towards that 2014 team again? So that's my evaluation on TCU's. I think they're right in between. Not right in between. I think they're not nearly as good, obviously, as the 2014 team, but I think they can be better than the 2017 version of themselves. Just we need to see it. We need to see it actually happen. We need to see them on field before we can actually say that. And with that, Iowa State returning 88% of their production from last year. I got them at 11-2. I got them being the Big 12 runner-up. Really talented team, really talented scheme. Really, everybody in that program is bought into being a Cyclone. For me, it's Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy holds him back. The most experienced quarterback in the league this year, has more games than anybody else as far as quarterback, but he has never led he did in his best year last year. He did not lead in a statistical category. So for me, I can't pick Iowa State when their quarterback's not as good. They have a better running back, but a worse running back room, if that makes sense. Yes, I have the best running back in the conference, but there's 2 guys in Oklahoma who together make a better running back tandem is kind of what I'm saying here. So with that, we're going to hit Oklahoma. I am very, very high on Oklahoma's offense this year. If you followed me on Sooners_B12C, that's the Big 12 Country Sooners account. I help run that account. Oklahoma's Bill Bedenbaugh is saying things that we've never heard Bill Bedenbaugh say in fall camp about his offensive line. So that tells me already that he's kind of happy to where the offensive line is. He probably has an idea of a couple rotations that he wants to do that he's going to test out in the first 3 games. Listen, Oklahoma's going to have their offensive line figured out by West Virginia, because if they don't, Dante Still's going to blow them up. And then we look at their quarterback situation. He's the number 1 returning quarterback in college football. We look at the wide receivers. You got Jaden Hazelwood coming back completely healthy. Per him and per Lincoln Riley and per everything that all the writers are saying. You've got Marvin Mims actually slotting into where he was most effective, and that was the slot. So now you have inside stuff you have to worry about. If you're a linebacker or safety, you can't double Jaden every time, because you got to watch. You've got to watch Marvin Mims. He's the most dynamic returning wide receiver in the country. Period. End of story. I don't care what you think about Jalen Ross or Jalen Ross over in Clemson. I don't care what you think about any of the guys at Alabama. I don't care what you think about Olave in Ohio State. I don't care what you think about with anybody down in Texas. I don't care what you think about anybody else in the nation. Marvin Mims is the most dynamic, most explosive, most versatile wide receiver returning for 2021 in college football Write it down. I said it. I'll take my shots. I have no problem saying it. So with that, things we got to look out for Oklahoma's offense. Their tight end, their H-back, tight end, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to call it the Sooner back. Or if we really want to get creative, we can call it the Owen back. And if you know, you know. So we look at Austin Stogner, Braden Willis, and Jeremiah Hall. You can play all three of them in a formation at one time. Think about that for a minute. You can play all three of those guys, a running back, Spencer Rattler, your 5 offensive linemen, and really you can go dual backs and you can have those 3 on the field. What are you going to do to stop that formation? Because there's so much out of that formation you can do with all 4 of those 5. You have Eric Gray, Kennedy Brooks, Jeremiah Hall, Braden Willis, and Austin Stogner on the field. You can run so much out of that. You have, I don't think people realize what we have in the H-back position. It's special this year. It's Alabama type of special, to where it's that one difference maker. Like you have, like for Alabama last year, they were unstoppable because they had a guy at wide receiver that couldn't be stopped. And then they had a guy at running back that couldn't be stopped when they handed him the ball. So that's what we're looking at with Oklahoma in the H-back position, because you can have Jeremiah Hall run. You can throw the ball to Austin Stogner. All 3 of those guys want to get in your face and block. So Oklahoma in the H-back position is really strong. So we're looking at the weakest position for Oklahoma being the offensive line, and more looking at the center position, because we do have a 4-man race for the center position with Andrew Rame, Robert Congle, Ian McIver, and Chris Murray. Oh, by the way, the 2 of them, Robert Congle and Chris Murray, if they don't win the job, they can fill in as rotational guys at the other 4 offensive line positions. So it's, for me, the center position is the one you need to look out for. The center position is the one that needs the most look at. And we'll have that figured out by West Virginia. And that should scare all the rest of the Big 12 teams. It really should. Now let's head over to the defense. I'm one that I've put out my 3-man defensive line rotation kind of thing. I've put that out there. I got blasted because I forgot Isaiah Coe, and I completely apologize for that. But hear me out when I say this. Oklahoma on the defensive line, so defensive tackle, nose guard, and defensive end, can go 3 deep at any point in time. You can go 4 deep at the rush position. That's Nick Benito's position. So you've got 4 people, or you've got 4 positions that can rush the passer, and you can go at least 4 deep, or at least 3 deep in every single one of those positions. So everybody's kind of been speculating what the Mike and Will linebacker positions rotation will look like. I think Deshaun White and Brian Asamoah start. I think David Agwebu and Caleb Kelly are rotational pieces. And I think someone like Shane Witter or Danny Stutzman, I think they become your travel linebacker rotation guy. So when Caleb Kelly and Brian Asamoah have been out there and they're gasping for breath because they're chasing people down and just absolutely having games, but they need a break, hey, bring in Shane Witter, bring in Danny Stutzman. That's what I kind of think goes on here. And I kind of think it's the same thing for the defensive backfield with the cornerbacks, with the defensive backs. I got DJ Graham, reluctantly packed fields, Delarian Turner-Yell, Jeremiah Criddle, and Woody Washington. Those are my defensive back starters. I got Jaden Davis, Key Lawrence, Billy Bowman, Latrell McCutcheon, and Justin Harrington. Now, I'm going to take Justin Harrington out of the quote-unquote backup role, and I'm going to put Bryson Washington there because I think Justin Harrington is going to play the position that is having the most struggle covering someone. So, like when it's a Charlie Kolar from Iowa State, Justin Harrington's going to be on. That's just how that's going to work. When it's a Xavier Hutchinson, they take Charlie Kolar off and they bring in Xavier Hutchinson, or it's the kid from Texas Tech. the taller guys that make it really hard for a DJ Graham or a Woody Washington to cover, I think that's where we fit in Justin Harrington. I think he is going to be the specialist tall guy shutdown defensive back. That's what I think he's going to do. And I think you can plug in DJ Graham at free safety if you need to do this. I think you can plug in Woody Washington at safety, or you can plug in, I mean, you can plug in all these guys at every other position except for Pat Fields and Delarian Turner-Yell, I think are just actual true safeties, and probably the same thing with Key Lawrence. But I think everybody else can play every other defensive back position. And that gives you the kind of versatility and rotation that you need if you want to be elite defensively. And I think Oklahoma is going to take a step to be elite defensively. And I think what we're going to see out of Oklahoma is, listen, last year, I get it, it's COVID year, can't really use a lot from last year, and I get that. But last year, Oklahoma only allowed 103.27 yards per game. One team got over 200 yards rushing, and that was Florida at the very end of the year. Only one team got 500 total yards against Alex Grinch's defense last year. Again, Florida. So if we're going to sit here and we're going to speculate how good is the Oklahoma defense, they finished 15th last year in S&P Plus. 15th. That's the highest they finished since 2015. Or actually, that's the highest they finished since Mike Stoops came in 2012. That's the first time Oklahoma has finished in the teens since Mike Stoops came back. It's been 41, 89, 101, going from 2019 all the way back to 2012. Or I guess 2020 all the way back to 2012. It's 15, 41, 89, 101, 55, 22, 33, 33, 15. So the difference here being is it seems like we're kind of jumping back in time to where we had Brent Venables and we had really elite defenses, because I could see this being a 2010 type defense. And if you don't remember what that defense looked like, go watch the 2010 team again. They had some athletes on it. They had some dudes. Or even watch the 2011 team. The 2011 team was not a bad defense, guys. And I could see us being that. And the difference in how this defense feels is because of what the offense is returning and running back and what they're going to do running the football. And that's going to be the key for Oklahoma here, is how well do they run the football? Are they going to be a lower or an upper 100-yard running team per game? Or are they going to return back to that Lincoln Riley, run the ball, really just pound the rock? Because this is the last year was the lowest amount of rushing yards per game since 2012. And it kind of felt like the 2012 offense a little bit, to where we had to rely on the pass to set up the run a little bit. And so that's what I'm going to be looking for as far as Oklahoma this year. I've got Oklahoma leading the conference in all Big 12 selections. And yeah, I get it. Whatever you want to tell me, I'm Homer, whatever. Sure, whatever. This is my selection. This is how I see it going. So to put it in better words for us, when Ramondre Stevenson came back, Oklahoma's offense averaged 205.8 rush yards per game. I think we needed something like 200 yards or something like that against Baylor and Iowa State, and we would have broken that threshold on the year. We just didn't do it because, 2 weeks off from Oklahoma State to Baylor, didn't play the West Virginia game, had to wait like a week and a half or something like that before we played Iowa State. So, and then we just exploded for 435 yards rushing the football against Florida. So I like Oklahoma this year. I really, 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 really like Oklahoma and their defense this year. And I really like the way their schedule sets up for them. It sets them up to get to Kansas State, to get that monkey off their back against Kansas State. Because listen, Tulane, Western Carolina, Nebraska, and West Virginia, sorry about you guys. You're not in the same realm of talent as Oklahoma. You're not in the same realm of talent as Oklahoma schematically. You're not in the same realm as Oklahoma as far as the backups you'll even bring up onto the field. So for me, those first 4 games, Tulane, West Virginia, Tulane, Western Carolina, Nebraska, and West Virginia. You're going to see Oklahoma experiment a little bit. We're going to blow out the first three guys. If we experiment I don't think it'll be a whole lot of experimenting against West Virginia. I think it's going to be line up, run the football down their throat, is what I think we're going to do. Because, yes, I get it. We're undefeated against West Virginia in the Big 12 era since they've been in the Big 12. But you can't sleep on West Virginia at all, because they are a good football team and they will find ways to challenge you. And that game is where I think our depth, our backups and their backups really get challenged and really kind of try and figure out, okay, this is how we play at the Big 12 level. Okay, this is what we need to do to take it to the next level when they play Kansas and Texas and TCU. Because those three games right there are going to tell us how physically dominant of a football team we are. Because Kansas State, Chris Kleiman's got a dominant running football. He's got a physically dominant team. And when I say physically dominant, they want to beat you in the head and they want to wear you out. They want to punch you. They want to gut punch you. They want to take out the kidneys. So when they do that uppercut to the head, you're done, for boxing terms here. Texas, they're just, it's the Red River rivalry game, guys. It's not 2011. It's not 2012 to where it's one of those situations, as much as I want it to be. And I kind of think it will look a lot like that. I don't think the score will represent that, because I think both teams are going to be more run-based and try and kill a lot of the clock off. And then TCU. TCU is going to be a really good defensive team. Lincoln Riley likes playing TCU. But those three games are going to tell us how dominant, how physically dominant our defensive and offensive line and their depth will be moving forward in the season, because they got a pseudo bye week with Kansas. Then they play Texas Tech. So it's with Texas Tech, their offensive line's not great either. So defensively, it's just show up, let the depth chart handle Kansas, because that's what I think it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be us going to Kansas and just, I think we can play a B game and get away from Kansas by 40 points. Because I think the guys that are on the backups and the rotational pieces, I think they're going to want to get in there and they're going to want to get some action and show how physically good they are. And that's all Oklahoma has to do against Kansas, is just out physical Kansas, and they win that game by 40. That's all they got to do against Texas Tech offensively, is just out physical Texas Tech, and you've beaten Texas Tech. That's all you got to do against Baylor's defense or offense, is just out physical Baylor's offense, and you win that game. And so you start backing up with, okay, look at what we did against the 3-game stretch against Kansas. If they can get out of those 3 games against Kansas to where they just push people out of the way, they move people, they're physical, they hit hard, they play hard, and the results are going to come with that, because this team is super talented. That brings us into the most important 3-game stretch of the year, with Iowa State, Oklahoma State, and Iowa State again in the Big 12 championship game. Those 3 games alone, are we SEC level now? Because if we're SEC level, Iowa State doesn't stand a chance in either game. The rivalry aspect on the road at Oklahoma State is going to be the most toxic atmosphere we play in all year. Kansas State won't be that. Kansas won't be that. Baylor won't be that. Oklahoma State will. Oklahoma State will be the nastiest environment we play all year. The Texas game, the Red River rivalry game, is going to be the most friendly atmosphere we play in not in Norman all year. Maybe even Kansas, because no one shows up to Kansas football anymore. But Oklahoma State, that crowd's going to be raunchy. That place is going to be rocking. Oklahoma State's going to be looking Oklahoma State's not going to be in position to do anything as far as making the Big 12 championship game, in my mind, and the way I see the season playing out. But Oklahoma State can ruin Oklahoma's year. They can. They can absolutely ruin Oklahoma's year. And that's what they're going to be playing for. They're going to be having that 2001, 2002 mindset. And so I think Oklahoma State is going to be more of a challenge than Iowa State's going to be. Oklahoma State's defense is stingy. I think Oklahoma State's offense is better than they were last year because they're not going to be so predictable. So for me, I like Oklahoma going undefeated on the year. I really do. I like them undefeated through the Big 12 championship game. I think they'll beat Iowa State again. And again, if they are really going to show that we are SEC level, we are winning the national title, we're doing the things we need to do so we can go win that national title and show how physically dominant of a football team we are, they've got to win those 3 games, and they've got to look. They've got to have that look. You know how Alabama can just show up to Auburn and just beat them off the ball and just beat the crap out of Auburn for 4 quarters, and it's like a 34-10 win, but it's just like, my gosh, look how physically dominant they are. Like, look how good they are. That's what we need to see out of Oklahoma. I don't care if we win 62-10. I don't. It'd be nice to win 62-10. But if Oklahoma just has that, my gosh, who's going to stop that? That offensive line's so good. That defensive line is so good. That those linebackers are flying around. The safeties are making plays. The cornerbacks are covering people. I mean, when we talk about Alabama, that's what we talk about. We talk about how consistent their secondary is. We talk about how their linebackers fly around and hit people. We talk about how their defensive line just creates all sorts of havoc. We talk about how consistent their offensive line is. We talk about how good their running backs are. We talk about Alabama here the most in recent years. They're putting out first round wide receivers every other year, or almost every year. So it's right now, when you're looking at Oklahoma, this is the team, this 2021 football team for Oklahoma. If Oklahoma is going to win number 8, it has to be this year, because 2022 is probably going to be a year that Texas shows out a little bit. And if we're still in the Big 12, we're probably going to be in the Big 12 championship game against Texas, and we're going to lose in that Texas Big 12 championship game. I'm just going to tell you guys, that's my prediction right now for next year, because I don't know how good that team's going to look, because there could be so much coming off this team. I mean, think about it. Spencer Rattler's draft eligible. Kennedy Brooks, Eric Gray, they're draft eligible. Austin Stogner's draft eligible. Jeremiah Hall is a redshirt senior. Braden Willis is a senior. Wanya Morris is draft eligible. Marquise Hayes is a redshirt senior. Tyrese Robinson's a redshirt senior. Theo Weiss is draft eligible. Mike Woods is draft eligible. Drake Stoops is draft eligible. Jaden Hazelwood is draft eligible. Isaiah Thomas is a redshirt senior. Perion Winfrey's a senior. Jalen Redmond is draft eligible. Nick Benito's draft eligible. Deshaun White's a senior. Brian Asamoah's draft eligible. Pat Fields is a senior. Delarian Turner-Yell's a senior. Jeremiah Criddle and Woody Washington are draft eligible. Justin Harrington's draft eligible. Caleb Kelly's a redshirt senior. Everybody that I have as the backup, LaRon Stokes, Joshua Ellison, Isaiah Coe, Marcus Stripling, David Agwebu, and Jaden Davis are all draft eligible. So we're losing a lot for Caleb Williams to come in and just say, okay, go kill people. I've got 17 all Big 12 players for Oklahoma. We're losing almost all 17 of those guys next year. Oklahoma is going to have to refill a lot of things. Now, they've recruited really, 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 really well for the 2022 and the 2023 class. But right now, it's when we're looking at the 2021 season, this is the most talented Oklahoma has been on both sides of the ball, including special teams, with the punter that we just got in and with the kicker that we have. We're going to be a really hard football team to beat. If we're in a game and we have to rely on Gabe Burkick to make a 40-yard field goal to win, we know we're going to win the game. We got Gabe Burkick. I don't think I've ever seen an OU kicker with more swag than that dude. He's going to run out there and he's going to go make that kick. That's how good he is. I have no questions ever. I'm more surprised when Gabe missed kicks last year. I was more surprised than anything, and I think he was still kind of hurt last year. So he's probably healthy now. So we're going to see that freshman version of himself to where he was just making kicks like it was nothing. So right now, if we're going to be looking at Oklahoma and if we're going to be looking at their odds and their chances and their stuff to do, Oklahoma is the favorite to win the national championship this year because of their depth, because of their rotational depth, because their rotational depth is also super talented. That's why you see teams like Clemson. That's why you saw LSU. That's why you see Alabama win it every year. Is those three teams. That's why you saw. I'm gonna say this, and I don't care if Ohio State fans kind of jump in my mentions or not. Ohio State only wins playoff games when they're not supposed to make the playoffs. Ohio State only wins playoff games when Ohio State's not supposed to make the playoffs. They make the championship game when they're not supposed to make the playoffs. 2014. The Big 12 kind of did this, kind of helped them. So they should send a thank you card to the Big 12 when they completely fall apart here in a couple of years. So Ohio State 2014 should have been Baylor. For all of you TCU truthers out there, Baylor won the Big 12 that year. They co-signed TCU because they wanted to try and sneak two teams in case Florida State lost. Didn't work out, and they got left out. Last year with Ohio State, same situation. I didn't think they played enough games to even compete. I didn't think they were even on that level, but they beat Clemson. So they kind of proved me wrong on that. So again, Ohio State only wins playoff games when they're not supposed to make the playoffs. But speaking of the playoffs, like I said, I got Oklahoma in the Big 12 winning. I got them 13-0. That includes the Big 12 title game. Like I said, 17 all Big 12 selections. I am a little biased in how I have people ranked. I'll admit it. I have no problem saying it. I've got a lot of Oklahoma State guys in there. I got a lot of guys. I got 27 guys from the state of Oklahoma in the all Big 12 list. I'll take that bias a little bit. I'll go ahead and eat a little bit of that bias, but I do have 7 guys from West Virginia. I got 7 guys from Iowa State, 6 guys from West Virginia, 5 guys from TCU, and 5 guys from Texas. So it's not like these other 5 teams are bad. I just like Oklahoma's talent more. I like Oklahoma's scheme more. I like Oklahoma's want to a little bit more on what I'm seeing out of camp. And right now, if you're not buying into Oklahoma as your national champion because you're a Texas fan and you think, oh, well, Oklahoma is going to lose to Texas this year for X reason, why do you believe in their offensive line? Why do you believe? Listen, Oklahoma, last year, we can argue, last year was Texas's best version of their offensive line. Gave up 6 sacks to Oklahoma. The year before that, they had some guys on it. 9 sacks. So if you're going to look at me and say, well, listen, this Alex Grinch scheme does this, and this. Yeah, Alex Grinch also goes after the quarterback. He had 10 sacks against Kansas last year. He had 9 sacks against Texas. So for me, we're looking at, if you're Texas, your best 2 versions of your offensive line averaged 7.5 sacks per game in those 2 games, gave up 15 total sacks against Oklahoma. Why do you believe in them more now this year when they're not as good? They're not as talented. They're not cohesive as a unit yet. Why are you believing more in their offensive line now than after you watched the last 2 lines that were probably better, significantly better? Why do you believe them more now? Oklahoma's hardest opponent the last 2 years in the Big 12, hear me first when I say that, their hardest opponent in the Big 12 has been probably Iowa State or Baylor, right? We can say that in the Big 12 championship games. Only 2 teams that Oklahoma has played in the top 10 the last 2 years out of the Big 12 has been Baylor and Iowa State. So with that said, those 2 teams gave up 9 sacks. So for me right now, it's Oklahoma's defensive line. They're dominant. They're going to dominate offensive lines in the Big 12 because, listen, there's not a lot of offensive lines outside of Iowa State's that are returning a whole bunch of people that are just super experienced and really just that much talented than everybody else. You're not going to get that out of the Big 12 this year. I like the Big 12 this year. I think there's a lot of really talented teams. I think there's a lot of really, really good defenses. I think West Virginia, Kansas State, Baylor, Texas, and Iowa State are going to have, and Oklahoma State, that's half the league. I got 6 teams that are going to have top 40 SP plus defenses. 6. I've got 6 of Oklahoma's opponents. That's half the league. That's over half the league with top 40 defenses per S&P plus. I think Oklahoma's going to have a top 10 defense. So that's 70% of the conference with a top 40 SP plus defense in the league. So for me, that's what I got. So going into the national level, so the national semifinal, the college football playoffs, listen to me. You guys are going to call me crazy. I got Cincinnati making the playoffs. Go look at their schedule and tell me where they're going to lose. And actually, don't tell me where they're going to lose. Tell me if, A, is Notre Dame as good as we all say they are? B, is Indiana as good as we're all saying they are? Because if here's the simple fact, is if Cincinnati gets out of those 2 games and they win, it doesn't matter the points they win by. They win. Let's say Notre Dame finishes 8-4 and they finish ranked. Let's say Indiana finishes 9-3 and they finish ranked. Why would we leave out an undefeated American champion who's probably going to have, let's see, there's 2 there, so they're probably going to have 5 wins against top 25, saying either SMU gets ranked and UCF gets ranked, and then that next game against either UCF or SMU, they're probably going to be ranked. So we're going to be looking at Cincinnati with at least 5, or at most 5 wins against ranked teams. Why would we leave them out? Undefeated, wins against 2 named brands, one of which everybody's kind of fallen in love with this offseason. The other one's a national power, or actually a blue blood. I'm sorry if I'm following my own blue blood list. They are a blue blood, and they have been pretty good the last couple of years. So are we really going to hold Cincinnati out? Are we going to really hold it against them for being in a group of 5 conference when they have 5 ranked wins, 2 of which are Power 5 teams that are actually pretty good? No, I don't think they will. I got North Carolina coming out of the Atlantic in the playoffs, and I've got Georgia coming out of the SEC also in the playoffs, and those 2 will play each other in what'll probably be the best college football playoff semifinal we've had since Oklahoma-Georgia. Those 2 are going to get after it. Meanwhile, I think Oklahoma can blow the doors off Cincinnati. They're nowhere near the size, the talent. They're not on that same level. Now, what gives Cincinnati a little bit of a following in, just kind of competing edge, is that they are a complete football team. They're kind of like Iowa State. They're all bought into their scheme. So Oklahoma's moving to the SEC. I don't know if you've lived under a rock this last month, but they're moving to the SEC. Who knows when? But if Oklahoma wants to show the SEC teams, these SEC fanboys that are breathing out their mouths, living in their mom's basement, or are former coaches in Division I that just happened to make a podcast because of COVID. If they're going to be that level, and if they're going to shut these people up, this is the year. You got to blow the doors off Cincinnati. You got to blow the doors off Iowa State twice. You got to beat the crap. You got to just beat physically the crap out of these teams. Listen, nobody on Oklahoma's schedule is better than Oklahoma talent-wise. Nobody on Oklahoma's schedule is more physical than Oklahoma. If we're looking at it from the semifinal game back to Tulane, so Cincinnati, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, Iowa State, Baylor, Texas Tech, Kansas, TCU, Texas, Kansas State, West Virginia, Nebraska, Western Carolina, Tulane. Not one of those teams you can name to me is more physical, is more talented, has a better scheme, or just has more overall depth than Oklahoma. Oklahoma, if they're going to be that team, if Lincoln Riley wants to be that coach, if he wants to take that step into being the top coach of college football, or challenge Dabo Swinney for the next top coach for college football when Nick Saban finally does step down, he's got to show out this year. He's got to tell this team to be focused, locked in, and just completely dominate folks. Dominate people. That's what they got to do. Because if they don't dominate people, it's going to be a problem for Oklahoma when it comes to playing Georgia in the national championship game. If they struggle against Texas Tech, or if they struggle against Baylor, or one of the Iowa State games, or if they're in a game with Oklahoma State, they might struggle with Cincinnati, and they might struggle if they make it to the Georgia national championship game. So Oklahoma's got problems. I'm not as high on the linebackers as everybody else is right now. I think they're the weakest unit because they showed the least amount of growth last year. That could just be because they didn't have the offseason, summer workouts. It could be all that. I like the talent ceiling for those guys. I like the defensive backs a whole lot. I don't like Pat Fields, but he's been around, so I guess he's seen a whole bunch of things, so he can get that. So for me, I like Oklahoma. I like Oklahoma winning the national championship this year, getting number 8. Might be some Sooner thick glasses I got on. And listen, I'm going to say it this way. I will say it this way. If it's not Oklahoma, it's Georgia. Let me tell you why Georgia. Georgia brings back a really talented defense. Georgia brings back a really talented offense. Georgia is going to be the most complete versions of themselves. Georgia is going to have a better quarterback than they did in 2017. So now we're looking at a Georgia team that I think this Georgia team, the 2021 Georgia team coming in, would not only beat the 2017 version of themselves, I think they beat the 2017 versions of Oklahoma, and I also think they beat the 2017 version of Alabama. So I'm buying in on Georgia this year. So if Georgia's going to win a national championship, it's going to be this year. If Oklahoma's going to win a national championship, it's this year. So guys, that's my Big 12 preview for the week. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you want to talk more Oklahoma football, I am more than happy to discuss things with you guys on Twitter at the Major League 3, at Sooners_B12C, or at Jake Major 25. Those are all my accounts. And guys, it's been fun. I've enjoyed it. I'll talk to you guys next time. Deuces.